Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajakacharya Ashtotartha Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON BPT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajakacharya Ashtotartha Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai Ananda Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Okay. So, text 19, I assume, right? All right. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay. On this 25th day of November 2025 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are in chapter 13, Nature, the Enjoyer, and Consciousness, text 19 on page 550, excuse me. Iti chetram tatha jnanam geyam choktam samasataha madbhakta etad Vigyaya Mad Bhavayo Papadyate Iti Chetram Tatha Jnanam Geyang Choktam Samasataha Mad Bhakta Etad Vigyaya Mad Bhavayo Papadyate Iti Chetram Tatha Jnanam Geyam Choktam Samasataha Man Bhakta Etad Vigyaya Man Bhavayo Papadyate Iti Chetram Tatha Jnanam Geyam Choktam Samasataha Man Bhakta Etad Vigyaya Man Bhavayo Papadyate Iti Chetram Tatha Jnanam Geyam Choktam Samasataha Man Bhakta Etad Vigyaya Man Bhavayo Papadyate. Want to try? Iti Chetram Tatha Jnanam Geyam Choktam Samasataha Man Bhakta Etad Vigyaya Man Bhavayo Papadyate Iti Chetram Tatha Jnanam Geyam Choktam Samasataha Man Bhakta Etad Vigyaya Man Bhavayo Papadyate Iti Chetram Tatha Jnanam Geyam Choktam Samasataha Man Bhakta Etad Vigyaya Man Bhavayo Papadyate Iti Chetram Tatha Jnanam Geyam Choktam Samasataha Man Bhakta Etad Vigyaya Man Bhavayo Papadyate. Bhakta Chad.
Iti Chetram Tatha Jnanam
Iti Chetram Tatha Jnanam
Geyam Choktam Samasataha
Geyam Choktam Samasataha
Mad Bhakta Etad Vigyaya
Man Bhakta Etad Vigyaya
Mad Bhavayo Papadyate.
Man Bhavayo Papadyate. Anyone else? Anyone else online?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Iti Kshetram Tata Jnanam
Iti Chetram Tatha Jnanam
Geyam Choktam Samastaha
Geyam Choktam Samasataha
Madbhakta Etad Vijnaya
Man Bhakta Etad Vigyaya
Madbhavayo Papadyate.
Man Bhavayo Papadyate. Is that you, Vanessa?
Hare Krishna, it is me.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for
Thank you for class.
You're on the same time as us, right? 7:25?
8:20.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
No, it's good for me. Thank you.
Okay, well, the words iti, thus, chetram, the field of activities, the body. Tata, also, jnanam, knowledge, geyam, the knowable, cha, also, uktam, described, Samasataha, in summary, Mat Bhaktaha, my devotee, Etat, all this, the Vigyaya, after understanding, Mat Bhavaya, to my nature, Upapadyate, attains. Translation, Krishna says to Arjuna, thus the field of activities, the body, knowledge, and the knowable have been summarily described by me. Only my devotees can understand this thoroughly and thus attain to my nature. Purport. The Lord has described in summary the body, knowledge, and the knowable. This knowledge is of three things: the knower, the knowable, and the process of knowing. Combined, these are called vijnana, or the science of knowledge. Perfect knowledge can be understood by the unalloyed devotees of the Lord directly. Others are unable to understand. The monists say that at the ultimate stage, these three items become one, but the devotees do not accept this. Knowledge and development of knowledge mean understanding oneself in Krishna consciousness. We are being led by material consciousness, but as soon as we transfer all consciousness to Krishna's activities and realize that Krishna is everything, then we attain real knowledge. In other words, knowledge is nothing but the preliminary stage of understanding devotional service perfectly. In the 15th chapter, this will be very clearly explained. Now, to summarize, one may understand that verse 6 and 7, beginning from Mahabhutani and continuing through Chaitanya Dviti, analyze the material elements and certain manifestations of the symptoms of life. These combine to form the body or the field of activities. And verses 8 through 12, from Amanitvam through Tattva Jnanartha Darshanam, describe the process of knowledge for understanding both types of knower of the field of activities, namely the soul and the supersoul. Then verses 13 through 18, beginning from Anadi Matpadam and continuing through Riddhi Sarvasya Vishtitam, describe the soul and the Supreme Lord or the Supersoul. These three items have been described: the field of activity, the body, the process of understanding, and both the soul and the Supersoul. It is especially described here that only the unalloyed devotees of the Lord can understand these three items clearly. So for these devotees, the Bhagavad Gita is fully useful. It is they who can attain the supreme goal, the nature of the Supreme Lord, Krishna. In other words, only devotees, and not others, can understand the Bhagavad Gita and derive the desired result. Om jnana timirandasya jnanandana shalakaya chakshur unmilatam mena tasmai shri gurave namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I open my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So, Krishna has thus, he summarizes here what he's just explained. The field of activities, the Kshetra, knowledge and the knowable have been summarily described by me. So the knowledge and the knowable, that imply that there's a knower or knowers. So that's another important element of what he's describing here. In the beginning he says, let's see. Okay. So Arjuna asks this question: I wish to know what is Prakriti, nature, Purusha, the enjoyer, and the field, and the knower of the field, and of knowledge and the object of knowledge. Supreme Lord says, this body, O son of Kunti, is called the field, and one who knows this body is called the knower of the field. But then he goes immediately on to say that, O son of Bharat, you should understand that I am also the knower in all bodies. And to understand this body and this has been revised to knowers. This word, Kshetra Gayo, in this text number 3, I checked with my Sanskrit advisor, and he agrees that Kshetra Gayo can be either singular or plural. And so it is obviously plural because we have to know both knowers. Just to know the self is not enough. We need to know the super self and the relationship between them. Let's see. Because I think Prabhupada explicitly says that. Okay. anyway, it's clear that both knowers have to be understood. And so we have the Prakriti, the Purusha, who's the enjoyer. Now the living entity can take that role of an enjoyer, and therefore then he's known as the Purusha. And that will be explained in text 22. Purusha Prakritisto Hi. That Purusha is the living entity acting as the enjoyer, and known as the Purusha there. But by nature we're Prakriti. And so resolving that contradiction is an important part of Krishna consciousness. So Krishna has explained these three and these different elements. And the whole idea, especially he got these 8 through 12, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 5 verses of different elements of knowledge. I think there's about 20 of them. The most important of which is constant and unalloyed devotion unto Krishna, which opens the door to understanding all the other elements of knowledge. So why is knowledge so much stressed? Well, because when we act on the basis of knowledge. Now you may say sometimes people act on the basis of ignorance. Yes, as we certainly do. But that ignorance is, how should I say it, is our form of knowledge. In other words, it's a wrong knowledge, and it leads us to act and go in the wrong direction. But still, without knowing anything, just like if you want to go somewhere. I remember before the GPS, I have this program, it's still on my old computer, where you can key in an address, and it'll show you where it is on the map, and then it'll give you a good route from where you are to go, you know, and estimate how much the time is and all that stuff. So I'm still like to do that, to just see, you know. Because now, believe it or not, I spent about a year as a taxi driver in Long Island, not in New York. 1 year, about 1 year. And that was before, no GPS, no nothing, you know. And so I had map, I had a nice map. And we get an assignment, go here, and I look it up on the map, mark it up there, and then figure out the nice route. And so I got, you know, to be able to kind of know the streets of Long Island and Hempstead and where I was like that. So without the knowledge, you can't act. Whether you're going to, you know, go to work, you know, when's the bus come? I got to have that knowledge, you know, and all these different things. So knowledge is an inevitable concomitant of living in this world, acting. Even if the knowledge is wrong, you may act on in terms of that knowledge, and then you'll change, you know, you say, oh, that was wrong, so I have to act in a different way. So transcendental knowledge, it gives us a different perspective on everything. That's why, you know, the ideal, like the model for how to surrender to a guru is given by Sanatana Goswami when he surrendered to Lord Chaitanya in the 18, I think, chapter of the Madhya Lila. And here was someone who, as he says in his surrendering mantra, who was regarded as a great scholar, and he was. He knew Sanskrit, he knew Persian, he learned. He was the prime minister of the king, Nawab Hussain Shah. And they were born, both he and his brother, they were born in great Brahmin families and so forth. But that knowledge was not helping them to achieve the ultimate goal of life. They were very skilled in the knowledge in which they, you know, if they didn't meet Lord Chaitanya, they could have continued in that role, become wealthy. They already were wealthy, you know, and become influential and all these things. But as they understood intuitively when they met him, because they were also great devotees, they'd been raised as devotees, that here was our chance to really succeed in life, not just to become, you know, wealthy and influential in the government. And so they both surrendered, and I don't know if he composed it on the spot, but that's when it says in the book that Goswami, they chanted Namo Mahabhadanyaya Krishna Prema Padayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namani Goda Chujay Namaha. So that verse, if you think about it, it assumes that the one who's uttering that verse and believes in it understands that the greatest wealth is prema. Namo Mahabhadanyaya immediately means you are the most munificent, you are the most generous giver of gifts. And what is that gift? Namo Mahabhadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate. You're giving Krishna Prema. And then who are you? You are Krishna himself. Krishnaya, Krishna Chaitanya Namne. Your name now is Krishna Chaitanya. Namne Gaura Tuje Namaha. I offer my obeisance to you, golden complexion. So that's a critical verse in our canon, because here you have these obviously very intelligent, very pure, great souls immediately surrendering to Lord Chaitanya and becoming determined just on his order to give up their opulent lifestyle and everything and go to Vrindavan and take up a whole new life. So it's very a very good example to follow. But then when they reunite, Sanatana Goswami I think was first. Or did he go to Prayag first and teach Rupa? And I'm not sure the order in which that happened. But anyway, welcome, Hare Krishna. We're going to have the Bhagavad Gita class till 8:15, then we'll have darshan. You're welcome to stay. Hare Krishna. Yeah, you can. Well, this is like the men's side, but if you can just sit on the bench there with your mother, or whatever. If you can sit if you would like. We have room. Could you set up yeah. You can sit on the bench, or you get that, and then you'll get a book and everything. We are in chapter 13 of the Bhagavad Gita, which is right here. And we're studying text, what was it? 19, in which Krishna has just finished explaining what is Prakriti, energy, what is the Chaitra, the body, and all these different things. And I was just explaining the ideal expression of surrender and inquiry when someone finds someone who's going to accept as a guru. So Sanatana Goswami, he meets Lord Chaitanya in Benares, and after a few days he meets Lord Chaitanya, and he asks this question: Ke ami, kene ame jare tapatrai. Who am I, and why am I suffering the threefold miseries? Now, what are those threefold miseries? We all know them. We may not know them by that name, but we've all been through them. So there are difficulties in this world that goes adhyatmic, adhidaivik, and adhibhautic miseries. So we're all familiar with them, maybe not under those names. Adhyatmic means that you're not suffering from any disease necessarily, but your own mind, say, is giving you trouble. Or you have a chronic disease that is always giving you trouble, your own body. Or others are you're in good health, everything is okay, but somebody is after you for something, or some burglar comes or something, a million different things. And it doesn't have to be human beings. Prabhupada points out bed bugs. He may have had some problem with those in Vrindavan. This is other living beings causing you problems. Or the pandemic, those viruses, So obviously this is one difficulty in the material world. So there's adhyatmic, adhibhautic, and adhidaivik. The climate change. Now climate change is kind of a hybrid because it's anthropogenic climate change, isn't it? Didn't we cause it? So in one sense it's a long-range adhibhautic, but it acts as adhidaivik. What? Anthropogenic? And caused by human beings. All of this carbon, all of these greenhouse gases we're putting into them. But it, the hurricanes. It just had this horrific hurricane in Jamaica. Melissa. We didn't not conscious of it. It was very destructive. 150 miles an hour. Disaster. So that's obviously going to happen. We had our fires here. We're reading about every day. There's something going on. Droughts, floods, like that. So that's adhidaivik. And adhibhautic, I mentioned other living beings and adhyatmic. So these miseries we're either suffering from one or more of them, or they're threatening, And that's another kind of suffering. Your anxiety, will it happen? What am I going to do if it floods here? Like that. So that's material life. Within intervals, we have periods of satisfaction and, peace a little bit, happiness, joy, like that. But we know that it comes to an end. This is the thing about material pleasure. Of course, material pain does too. But the just understanding that there's all of these things to be anxious about, that itself is a misery. Just to be worried about material life. So, and then on top of all that, the very vehicle by which we can try to enjoy and live our life, the body, is temporary. And so that's another series of miseries. Welcome. We have Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadi, Dukkha, Doshana, Darshanam. Krishna says in this chapter, one of the elements of knowledge is to be aware of birth, old age, disease, and death. This is inevitable for all of us. Sometimes you don't get to old age and death, but you do get to death. That's for sure, birth and death. So then the question may arise, is there a way of ending these miseries? Now, in material philosophy says, no, there's no real way of ending it. But of course, you only live once, so you only have to go through it once. So try to get whatever you can, like that, right? Isn't it YOLO? Isn't that a scientific principle? I've seen it on T-shirts. Maybe it must be true, right? No, but the first lesson of the Bhagavad Gita, you don't live only one life. You live forever. Najayate mriyate vakadachan nayam budva bhavita vanabuya. Text 20, chapter 2. For the soul, there is never birth nor death at any time. The souls don't come into being, they don't go out of being like that. There's no new ones being created. We're eternal. That's Krishna's. Ajo nitya shashvato yam purana. The soul, as these all apply to Krishna too. The unborn, eternal, ever-existing, primeval. The soul is not slain when the body is slain. So the soul is, in a sense, the body is somehow like always slain. You can say it's slain by a disease, old age, whatever it is, but it's a machine, and eventually it becomes dysfunctional, and that's called death. But you don't die. That's the punchline of this verse. Nahanyate is not killed. Nahanyate hanyamane sharire. When the body is slain or the body dies, the soul doesn't die. We move on to another body. So now the question arises, well, okay, what determines that next body? How can I act? Even in this life, we have the same principle. Parents have a child. If they're responsible, they should want to educate the child. The child itself doesn't want to care about education. He wants to go play. Prabhupada said that he didn't want to go to school. And if his father was in charge, he would always pamper him. He said, then he would have never gotten the child. But his mother said, no, he has to go to school. So that's the classic Shreyas and Preyas dynamic. Am I going to just focus on immediate pleasure, how I can enjoy now? I don't want to go to school. Let's go bowling, or let's go to the bar or something. But the parents know, no, you have to. If you don't get an education, then you'll have a very difficult life, and you won't be happy later. And you'll say, oh, why didn't I go to study? So that's there in spiritual life also. The ultimate purpose of human life, the ultimate goal, is to make this our last birth. Not to come back. Don't come back. Just like that's the last chapter of Coming Back. Have you ever read the book? The last chapter is Don't Come Back. Written by Mukunda Goswami way back in the 70s. So if one is fortunate, he will ask these questions. Be curious about this. Is there an ultimate goal of human life? And is there a way? It may sound frivolous from the material point of view. Is there a way of being happy all the time, forever? And the Bhagavad Gita answers yes. The Vedic philosophy answers yes. There is an answer. There is a way to be. And this human form of life, or any material form of life, is artificial. It's not natural for the soul. We are exiles from this spiritual world. We were all there once. This is the philosophy we have. Lord Chaitanya says, you can quote him, what is it? Ainanda tanuja kinkadam patitam. Patitam means fallen. Patitam mam vishame bhavam buddho kripayata vapada pankajastita duli sadasam vichintaya. Your servant for eternity, I lost my true identity and fell into this horrid sea of birth and death, O Lord. O Nanda's son, please hear my plea. By your sweet grace, consider me a speck of dust upon your lotus feet forevermore. So that ideal of a speck of dust means, let me be your surrendered servant eternally. And that will give me peace and happiness, you see. Not this artificial material life. It's artificial for the soul. That's why we can never be happy. Even if you've got it all made, okay, I've got a nice bank balance, I'm in good health, everything, you know, and I've got a nice wife and the kids and everything is there. But you don't have to be a genius to understand that it's all temporary. You know, that you grow, that the children grow up, and you grow old. I mean, I remember my mother when I would visit her, and my father had passed away in 1987, but she lived on another 20 years. And she was living alone in the apartment I grew up in Hempstead. So I would fly up there. I was living in Miami, and believe it or not, they had a $69 round trip fare at that time. And I don't know, I'm lucky I didn't crash, but I may have skimped on it. But anyway, I was getting these flights, and I would go up there. And as soon as she saw me, she said, "Oh, Tom," you know, she wouldn't call me Dravida. And then she wanted to feed me, just like the old days, you know. And so, okay, make me some mashed potatoes or something, you know. So, you know, and she was a very good mother, very loving mother. And at the end, it was like 2 weeks before she passed. I was visiting her. She was in Ithaca at that time with my brother. He was living there, and she was living with him with his wife, and he had one kid at that time. And so. But then he called me and said, "You have to come up and take care of Mom for a week or two, because I have to go to Chicago to see my son graduate from college, and I'm taking everybody." He said, "Okay." So I came up there. So she, you know, she was a little forgetful and everything, you know. So, but I told her, "Mom, it's time for japa." And at that point, she was ready to, you know, she knew about Hare Krishna before, you know. So I didn't give her any beads or anything, and she couldn't learn the whole mantra. It was too much at that time. So we would do a phrase at a time. I said, "Hare Krishna." And then she was like, "Hare Krishna." She was like waking up. It was a great, I have a recording, maybe I'll play sometime. And we went on for maybe 10, 15 minutes. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. And it was great. It wasn't that she had, you know, she had been a subscriber to the magazine in the early days, you know, when I joined. And when I would come after my father died, she would, you know, I remember she was, at one point she was in a assisted living place. You know, she was still cooking for herself and everything. So I went up there and I brought a recording of the Hare Krishna mantra, Prabhupada chanting, you know, and we danced, you know, and she was dancing and chanting like that. So I felt, you know, and she was a sincere soul, very nice. So anyway, the point is that in the knowledge that we're getting, because we're speaking about knowledge, that what you understand as is important in life, what you understand as a goal, and how you are, you know, focused on achieving that goal, is all part of your human nature that you get from parents, from the education, from books, from association, you know. And the whole point of the Krishna consciousness movement, Srila Prabhupada came to give us this choice and this knowledge of a whole different perspective on what life is all about, what's the meaning of it, you know. And simply put, the meaning of human life, because the lower animals, they can't understand this, is to struggle to understand and to act in our actual eternal relationship with God, and to revive that eternal relationship with God, which is one of loving exchange. This is what's so wonderful about it, is that, as Krishna says several times in the Bhagavad Gita and other places, I can only be known through devotion. Because he opens up, he reveals himself proportionately to your genuine, loving, devotional spirit and service. That's what he responds to. You can't, you know, by my force, by my yogic power, you know, Krishna doesn't reveal himself that way. So that's the magic of bhakti, is that it's a development of a service attitude and a loving attitude toward God, so that He reveals more and more of who He really is and what our relationship is. And it's truly magical. You know, it's just this one point, because we're all pleasure-seeking beings. This is what it means to be a living entity, because Krishna is Anandamaya Vyasad. He's always filled with bliss and happiness, no matter what he does. And we are part and parcel of Krishna. Mamai Vangsho Jiva Loka Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. That means we have his qualities in minute degree, though. But still we have his qualities. So just as he is enjoying like anything, I mean, it's just like you can learn a lot about God by thinking of your own nature, you know. What would you do if you were God? Would you say, well, let me have a varied experience. Sometimes I'll suffer, and sometimes I'll feel anxiety, and then I'll be happy? No. You would be happy all the time. Why not? But that happiness is not something degrading, because the happiness is always in relation to his devotees. Now, in the spiritual world, the devotees include the rivers, you know, and the things, and the trees, the fruits, the cows, certainly, you know. He's got a unique relationship with every being there. And it's all based on service and loving exchange and like that. So that's the home, you know, that we want to go to. There's a beautiful painting of Krishna in the forest, in Vrindavan forest. He's sitting on a comfortable seat there. And there's a little cow or a calf in front of him, I think, and there's a deer, and there's some other, and he's just, they're just looking at him with great devotion. And I wrote a little poem about it. It says, the sweetness of Sri Krishna's form beguiles. Still sweeter is his face like autumn moon, but sweeter than the sweetest is his smile, whose luscious beauty makes the gopis swoon. Govinda's beauty captivates the doves, the swans, the deer, the cow, and every tree. Indeed, in Braja, every creature loves Sri Krishna and is drowned in ecstasy. That all-enchanting land is paradise, our home, where we may dwell eternally. Most welcome there are those who pay the price to learn to love Sri Krishna perfectly. And it's not just to learn, but it's to relearn. It's something that we've known or didn't know many births ago, and it's still in there. It's our nature, but it's buried under all this Maya illusion. So Krishna consciousness is a process of purification. This is the first teaching of Lord Chaitanya in the Shikshastika. Cheto darpana marjanam bhava mahadavagni nirvapanam. By this chanting of this mantra especially, congregational chanting is most powerful, one cleanses the mirror of the heart, meaning that we can finally see ourselves. We know who we are. And we see Krishna there too, in form of super soul. And that ends. It's a virtual end to our suffering in the blazing fire of birth and death. Bhava, becoming, birth and death, old age. Mahadavagni means the great forest fire. Nirvapanam, extinguishment. So it comes through purification, which comes through engaging in Krishna consciousness, beginning with the chanting of the holy name. So it starts there, but it doesn't end. The next line says, Shreya Kaidava Chandrikavadadanam. This chanting is like moonshine, I guess, or sunshine, that causes this white lotus of good fortune to unfurl everywhere, in our own hearts and also everywhere in the world where it goes. And what is that good fortune? That's coming in contact with this knowledge, being inspired by association to take up the practices, to leave it. This is all our good fortune. Everything else looks like good fortune, but it's not. Vitadanam vidyavadhu jivanam. And the chanting, the Krishna consciousness, naturally awakens the knowledge that we're studying here in the Bhagavad Gita. It's already there, but it awakens naturally. So then he says, vidyavadhu jivanam anandam buddhivardhanam. Ananda is real bliss. Now there's something that you've never heard before, I think, unless I told you. And you won't hear it unless I tell you. You know why chocolate is so addictive? There's a chemical in there. They've called it anandamide. Anandamide. Yeah. So even on the material platform, the word ananda. But real ananda doesn't come to an end. It's ever expanding. So here he says, anandam buddhivardhanam. So we have this ocean out here, we're all familiar with, and we don't want it to expand, right? If it expands, it's a tsunami going on, and we have to run up to that Kate Sessions Park and watch it. So, but we want it to expand in our hearts. So that's what's happening. Anandam buddhivardhanam. This chanting causes us, and we've seen it, Chaitanya Charitamrita is full of descriptions of Lord Chaitanya leading that chanting and everybody being drawn in. And it's just like an ocean of happiness. So this congregational chanting allows you to experience that ocean of happiness growing, and you're diving and surfacing in it. Pratibadam purnamitasvadanam. At every step, you can enjoy happiness. Now, how can you enjoy happiness at every step? Only if you're always in contact with the source of happiness. Now, in our material life, that source is outside somewhere. It's someone else, something else we have to bring up in contact with our senses. But clearly that's temporary. It's temporary because the body is temporary. But Krishna's always in our heart. He's always with us, and we are eternally that soul. If we can develop that consciousness of being with Krishna on the subtle plane, of remembering him in within and without and through the holy name, then we can always be in a happy state. Because we're not separated from our source of happiness. Even at that critical point of leaving this body, we can be peaceful and happy. And we saw it, with our good friend Rajendra Nandana. He was very advanced. I wasn't able to visit him at the last point. He was upstairs, one or two flights, and I had this very serious sprain in my ankle. I could hardly walk, so I couldn't visit. But I called him on the phone. But he was very advanced, and he was very peaceful. Shamali, according to Yamunapati, the father who was at her side, she was just like, he felt that the Vaikuntha airplane had come and she wasn't at all in anxiety. Now I saw, because I worked in a hospital for a whole year before I joined the temple, as inhalation therapy. I was there, blowing the air and watching doctors. And it's such a painful situation. People are so afraid. Mostly they're put out. They're under medication. They're not conscious because it's so terrifying. But you want to be fully conscious. If you're fully conscious, then you can remember Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama. Or at best you can hear the devotees chanting around. So it's a whole different perspective on what human life is all about. It's not about, material freedom and democracy and all of this business. That's artificial. It's really about personal liberation and restoration of our original relationship with God, and remembering that relationship, living in it, and helping others to awaken, and ultimately returning home back to Godhead. And that's what Krishna is teaching us here in this 13th chapter. So, if there's any questions about that, or what we've read so far, did we do, how far did we get? Okay, so let's go on. We'll make some progress here. We won't get to 22 tonight, but maybe tomorrow. So 20, right? Prakatim Purusham Chaiva, this is page 551. Vidyanadiyo bhavapi Vikarang chagunang chaiva Vidhi prakriti sambhavam. Material nature and the living entities should be understood to be beginningless. Their transformations and the modes of matter are products of material nature. Purport. By the knowledge given in this chapter, one can understand the body, the field of activities, the knowers of the body, both the individual soul and the supersoul. The body is the field of activity and is composed of material nature. The individual soul that is embodied and enjoying the activities of the body is the Purusha, or the living entity. He is one knower, and the other is the supersoul. Of course, it is to be understood that both the Supersoul and the individual entity are different manifestations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The living entity is in the category of his energy, and the Supersoul is in the category of his personal expansion. Both material nature and the living entity are eternal. That is to say that they existed before the creation. The material manifestation is from the energy of the Supreme Lord, and so also are the living entities, but the living entities are of the superior energy. Both the living entities and the material nature existed before this cosmos was manifested. Material nature was absorbed in the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Mahavishnu, and when it was required, it was manifested by the agency of the Mahatattva. Similarly, the living entities are also in him, and because they are conditioned, they are averse to serving the Supreme Lord. Thus, they are not allowed to enter into the spiritual sky. But with the coming forth of material nature, these living entities are again given a chance to act in the material world and prepare themselves to enter into the spiritual world. That is the mystery of this material creation. Actually, the living entity is originally the spiritual part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. But due to his rebellious nature, he is conditioned within material nature. It really does not matter how these living entities or superior entities of the Supreme Lord have come in contact with material nature. The Supreme Personality of Godhead knows, however, how and why this actually took place. In the scriptures, the Lord says that those attracted by the material nature are undergoing a hard struggle for existence. But we should know it with certainty from the descriptions of these few verses that all transformations and influences of the material nature by the three modes are also productions of material nature. All transformations and variety in respect to living entities are due to the body. As far as spirit is concerned, living entities are all the same. Okay. So the material nature is beginningless, but it's not conscious. That's why it's material. The fact that we are eternal also means that, you know, we go through periods, as Prabhupada mentioned in the purport, that when everything is destroyed, if we're not ready to go back to Godhead, then we merge into the body of Mahavishnu for ages and ages and ages. We're unconscious, we're not thinking and we're not dreaming or anything, but all our karma is preserved, and we're not destroyed. We're still there in our, you know, potential form, if you will. And then when finally the time comes for another creation, then the universes come out, and ultimately Mahavishnu, with his glance, he's injecting all these countless living entities into the different universes. And they're in each universe is another expansion of Krishna, Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, and from the navel Brahma is born, and then gradually each universe is filled up with living entities. Again, they take up where they left off. We've all got our latent karma. So now that's the fate that happens. If we're around and we're not realized, we're not God consciousness when the destruction occurs, then that's what's going to happen. We're going to be merged, you know, and asleep for a long time. But we can decide because we have free will that we don't want that fate. We want to become self-realized, God-realized before this body is finished, so that we can leave this body and not take another one and go back to the spiritual world eternally, which is never destroyed. Krishna makes it very clear that that is eternal, Goloka Vrindavan, or one of the Vaikuntha planets. Vaikuntha means without anxiety. There's no anxiety of destruction. It's eternal. But as Gaudiya Vaishnavas, we're aiming to try to go to rejoin Krishna in his Vrindavan pastimes, most attractive. And Prabhupada has given us all facility. There's Krishna book. You can always read Krishna Leela. And now, you know, we have the whole Srimad Bhagavatam for that. So that's where we have to, you know, decide. Well, let me try it at least. Let me try, you know, chanting some rounds and see if I can give this up. And, you know, there's a whole lot of rules and regulations. But ultimately, it's a purification process It's all there in our heart. The love of God, it is there, latent. It needs to come out, become manifest, and that become the central factor in our lives, and then we'll know how to act. Okay, it's nearly time to adjourn, but I think I should have a few poems before then. Otherwise, it doesn't feel like I completed the class. So let's see, here's an old favorite. One should know that this is Bhadrinarayan Swami's favorite one. And it's based on a verse that Haridas Thakur chants. Now, Haridas Thakur is the Namacharya. I was figuring out how many rounds he chants. We know he chants, actually it's more than 300,000 names. You multiply them out. About 334,000. But how many rounds? It's 20,700 and something. Rounds, you know. No, I'm sorry. Yeah. Or is it 20,000 mantras? Okay, he chanted 192, I'm sorry, he chanted 192 rounds, yes. But he chanted 20,000 Hare Krishna mantras. Where we're down, you know, with our 16 rounds, it's like 1,700 or something like that, I think. Yeah. So that's an amazing number of mantras, you know. So Haridas Thakur is chanting this. He was discussing the holy name. He was in a group with Raghunath Das Goswami as like an adolescent, and his father was there and his uncle were there. They were all devotees, and they're very anxious to hear him glorify the holy name. But there was one non-devotee there. He was a Smarta Brahmin who was a personalist or whatever. And so Haridas said, if one chants the holy name even once, you know, sincerely, then he'll get liberation, something like that. So he said, that can't be. You know, he doubted. And if it's not true, I'll cut off your nose. Oh, a terrible offense, you know. So I think they kicked this guy out. But then they asked Haridas Thakur to please explain how it's true. So he chanted this verse, and then he gave a little explanation of it. And here's the verse. Anghak sanghadatakilang sakududihade vasakalalokasya tadanidi vatamilla jaladin jayachitagammangalang hare nama. Which means, put it into it. So then he explained it. I took the explanation and the verse and made it into a poem. When the moon is invisible, means when the moon is invisible, withered to nil, so it's a new moon. When the moon is invisible, withered to nil, and the sun is long gone from the sky. Now you have to go back 500 years, no electricity. When the sun goes, there's no sun, and the moon, there's no sun, and the moon is new. It means there's no light in the sky, then it's very, very dark, right? It's starlight, that's all you got. So when the moon is invisible, withered to nil, and the sun is long gone from the sky, then an ocean of darkness envelops this world, and the timorous fear they might die. But that thick pall of gloom is at once swept away when the first signs of sunrise appear, and the dawning of day gives assurance to all that in truth there is nothing to fear. In a similar way, when illusion holds sway, and the soul has forgotten his Lord, then the darkness of ignorance covers his heart. Sin and suffering are his reward. But as soon as he says Krishna's name even once, in a manner that doesn't offend, then his ignorance flees like the darkness at dawn, and his sin and his suffering end. So there's nothing to fear, for the sun of the name has appeared with his powers divine. In your hearts may that sun, benedictive for all, become fixed and eternally shine. So that's the Haridas Thakur's instruction. And it's time to adjourn, so please join us for a nice little kirtan with Sri Radha and Radha Giri.